friends, and welcome to Liberation Lectionary. I'm Francisco Garcia, and my partner in this effort.
Jamie Edwards Acton in Los Angeles.
And I'm in Nashville. This is our second Liberation Lectionary. We kicked this off last week. And just as a reminder, what we're doing is just sort of an informal conversation. I like to call this riffing, kind of like the way that you would riff in another creative context. We're riffing on the gospel or another scripture reading, but through the lens of liberation. We believe as pastors, priests, organizers, agitators, activists, all those things, that the gospel is ultimately about liberation. And that means mind, body, and soul. And so we have to do that work in the here and now. And that's what we're called to do. And we struggle with the scriptures to make sense of them, to see how they might guide us in that direction, following in the way of Jesus.
Yeah, and we're looking to the Sunday coming up. And so for any preachers or prophets out there, lay or ordained, that are looking for something to chew on for sermons or for conversations or for teaching, or for street testimony, we're hoping that you might find something valuable in this. This coming Sunday is the fourth Sunday after Pentecost, I think, and we'll be focusing on a scripture again. We're in Matthew, and we're focusing on a short passage today, and it's from Matthew 10:37 through 42. 10:37 through 42. I'm going to just jump in and read it. This comes from translation comes from the New Revised Standard Version. Jesus said, "Whoever loves father or mother more than me is not worthy of me, and whoever loves son or daughter more than me is not worthy of me, and whoever does not take up the cross and follow me is not worthy of me. Those who find their life will lose it, and those who lose their life for my sake will find it. Whoever welcomes you welcomes me, and whoever welcomes me welcomes the one who sent me. Whoever welcomes a prophet in the name of a prophet will receive a prophet's reward, and whoever welcomes a righteous person in the name of a righteous person will receive the reward of the righteous. And whoever gives even a cup of cold water to one of these little ones in the name of a disciple, truly I tell you, none of these will lose their reward." All right. Small but mighty.
That's right. And I'm, you might see my background here is from one of our many actions from our work of Sacred Resistance in Los Angeles. And I just felt like I needed some backup today. So look, my people's behind me.
That's right.
Of all faiths, united in the call for justice. One of our, I think, most interreligious actions that we did around issues of immigration justice outside of the detention center. A very sort of powerful moment.
Yeah. I was going to say, I think I was playing guitar that day, and I actually can see me playing guitar in the back there, now that me and Tom. So that's right. That's right.
To the right on the mic, I think I'm like chanting or doing something. So
that's right. Yeah.
Us in the work.
That's right. Very cool. Well, this is, it's a small but power-packed passage. I think this overlaps a little from last week when, this picking up where it left off, especially those who lose their life, for my sake will find it. And so I think we kind of talked about this and kind of how, and I'm not going to tell you what to talk about, Francisco, but I'm kind of moving on from 40 forward, verse 40 forward, just because we touched upon kind of the conflict that embracing Jesus's revolution of love and justice and equality, that, the kind of conflict that brings, right? And before we get to peace, there's going to be struggle, and there's going to be striving, there's going to be tension, there's going to be conflict, and Jesus spells that out in terms of even within the household, even within our own families. I'm sure we all have experiences of that. But I want to just start with maybe a point to get the ball rolling. Again, moving to the middle of the passage, that whoever welcomes me, whoever welcomes you welcomes me. When Jesus says, and he's talking to his disciples, and he's telling them, he's kind of, encouraging them to, to be confident, right? And to be courageous when they're out there, kind of bringing this word of liberation to people, that when people welcome you, they're not just welcoming you because they like the tunic you're wearing that day, or they like the way you combed your hair over to one side, or the cologne you might have on, or however you sound. If they're going to welcome you, they're what I think Jesus is getting at is they're welcoming this message, right, of liberation, this bigger concept of that Jesus spends his whole life trying to demonstrate and embody of turning things upside down, and how the last will come first, the first last, the lowly lifted up, all that. So I think it makes me think of the Matthew 25 passage, where unbeknownst to them, the disciples, are connecting with Jesus. They're serving Jesus. They're following Jesus in ways they don't, and through other people, through actions that are involved with other people. And so this makes me think here is that it's to do the work that Jesus calls us here is that when people welcome us with this, into a conversation, into a relationship, as we are talking about this message of liberation, that there's a larger communing happening. I mean, we're basically communing not just between these two entities, us and someone else, but Jesus says, I'm going to be in that mix. God's in that mix. This whole thing. I love that image of we're not just out kind of bringing a word and of liberation, but we're communing with Jesus and his movement. So
Yeah, and to build on that, I like thinking about how you said we're not just welcoming, it's like a much bigger welcome. And so when it says whoever welcomes me welcomes the one who sent me, and Jesus is talking about God, and just when we think about God in the most expansive, inclusive way possible, which what else could God be other than
right,
that, right? And so it's just this welcome that we haven't even fully seen in our human condition yet. And
yeah,
yet we're called to it, right? We're called to welcome all the way that God welcomes and sees creation, which is from this position of complete and utter love. But it's a love, again, that we're trying to attain and we haven't even gotten there yet, right? It's even beyond an agape, it's just this all encompassing love that has justice and peace and wholeness embedded right into it, and in a material and in a spiritual way, right? And
hmm
it's not this afterlife thing. It's about very much present, and how do we approximate that? So I'm thinking about the part where it says whoever gives even a cup of cold water to
yeah,
one of these little ones in the name of a disciple, none of these will lose the reward. And that image of the cup of cold water, just a simple act of refreshment, right? Uh,
yeah,
but the metaphor for me is about how what we think is a small, insignificant act, it can have huge consequences in a good way, right?
right.
Powerful consequences from the perspective of the gospel and the good news. So it's, again, building on last week's message that sort of challenges us to go beyond traditional notions of the family, right? Beyond the nuclear family,
Right.
just calling us to go beyond what we even imagine is welcome, and to go even further than that.
Yeah, I love this too. This, this a cup. I zeroed in on that too. I was thinking a cup of water, and just seems so. In the larger scheme of things, I think particularly clergy are preoccupied with trying to make a big splash everywhere, right? And but it's really these little things that make all the difference, and not just in serving someone or pastoring someone, but again, we're we when we get together, we're often in a social justice frame of mind. And in the LA Times 2 days ago, there was I think it was a front. I get it digitally, so I can never tell, but I think it was a front page story that said it had, Melina Abdullah and Hollywood Boulevard speaking to this gigantic Black Lives Matter rally, and the headline was "From Hashtag to Global Movement." And so, the hashtag is the cup of water, right? And that becomes this global phenomenon that infects people's consciousness and that changes institutions or challenges at the minimum, right? Challenges at this point institutions. So, I think of all the social justice small actions, that have happened that have turned into, Rosa Parks. I don't want to, mythologize it too much. Like there was no planning there. We know that she was a trained organizer, but I'm gonna stick with the story that she was just freaking tired, right? And she just wanted to sit, and she was tired of the injustice, and so she just wanted to sit where she wanted to sit. And from there, it turned into a whole thing. And also, at the same time, acknowledging, all the other organizing happening around that, in front and behind that. So, but
Cool thing about that story is that a lot of people don't know is that she was trained at the Highlander Folk School,
yeah,
um, place that was the centerpiece of the movement,
that's right.
where everyone from preachers to regular citizens trying to get trained in the movement, and to like old school labor radicals were all trained there together, including Dr. King and Pete Seeger did a lot of work there. And yeah, she was tired, she was fed up, and she was
Yeah,
ready when the time
that's
came.
right. That's right.
Those
When those two things converge, yeah. When those two things converge, it's wonderful.
And
So
speaking of, it was, I just checked actually while you were sharing that story, it was the front page of the Sunday edition of the LA Times,
yeah,
which is no small thing,
yeah,
uh, in terms of that. And it's a credit to years and years of small cups of water, right? Being
right.
offered, if we think of these, like you said, um, you know, the Black Lives Matter contingent in Los Angeles has had weekly gatherings in downtown Los Angeles. We've joined some of them, and they've been there tirelessly. And it's when all of this stuff went down just recently, in terms of the national uprising, they were poised and ready because they had been there all along. And so the question for us,
Every week, right? Every week in front of the sheriff's, Hall of Justice. So yeah, we could. I'm sure the list is so long, right, of the small, seemingly insignificant, not insignificant, but we don't think of the global repercussions they're going to have, and they become almost iconic too, especially when it's social justice. I think of the two, in the Olympics, '68 Mexico. With Tommy Smith and and the black gloves and
Carlos.
yeah, and that became just an icon, a symbol of black power and injustice against the black community, and just and or Kaepernick, on kneeling, and just iconic. And again, it seems, I mean, that's a big thing I mean, physically, it's a small thing to do, but it's a very courageous thing to do. And maybe that goes to the water too. It's like, seems insignificant, but it does take courage to even offer somebody, you know, um, to make that small gesture. It does take some, it's not like it's a mindless gesture. You know what I mean? It's very intentional, and it does take some courage,
It's
so
an act of compassion, and then
yeah,
also rooted in a deeper call of common humanity, which
yeah,
I think our movements now are sort of guiding us in that direction. And so, for us, is always the invitation, right?
yeah.
As people of faith, how does this good news get enacted through our acts of justice and mercy,
Yeah.
uh, that go beyond the walls of our sanctuaries?
And as we're talking, and just, I didn't think about this until just now, but water is such a basic, fundamental common denominator. I mean, it's something that transcends every single, culture, every people, we all need this, right? We're made up of this, right? This is the, what, 95% of our bodies where we have in common. I don't know what the percentage is, but you get my point. And so it's like in that cup of water is like the common, it's not just a gesture of, I mean, in addition to being a gesture of compassion, it's almost like our common humanity is wrapped up in this universal gesture of a cup of water. So
then we can get into the theological, right? The baptismal and thinking about Jesus and his conversation with is it the Samaritan woman at the well about living water, right?
mm-hmm.
And how sort of significant that is, both literally and spiritually.
That's right. Well, I think, what do you think, Francisco? Is that enough to give folks? That's got me thinking about this Sunday. Yeah, I hope it's got others thinking.
I think so. Yeah,
Okay.
it's a good place to. This is always just. I think for us, it's just a launching pad, a place to
Yeah.
explore, to think about ideas, and hopefully people are thinking about what they might say on Sunday, and then again how they might take it out during the week, what it means to us as individuals and as a community, to embody this actively during the week. So I'm hoping it is of some help to people.
Yeah. And when we post this, we'll post this on social media, and well, hopefully you will engage, and let us know what you think, and you can give us your liberation thumbs up, or if you want to challenge us and just share with us how we're way off base, we want to hear that too. So, but nevertheless, we'll be back. So I hope you've enjoyed spending these 10, 15 minutes with us. We'll be back next week, and we look forward to seeing you then. Take care.
All right. Be well, everybody. Get out there and march and pray and do the work.
Peace.